Sadhguru Jagi Vasudev is a realized master, mystic, and yogi. He has shown the way for people to attain to their natural joy and to live life with experience from one's own inner nature. His presence is filled with grace and compassion. Sadhguru's scientific approach towards spirituality and work towards the upliftment of humanity have received accolades worldwide. The words that come from him in intensity and utmost clarity, from his deep understanding and wisdom, can change the very core of the being. Belonging to no particular tradition, Sadhguru incorporates what is most valid for the modern person from the spiritual sciences. His work, an outpouring of his blissfulness, finds expression in the form of a ceaseless offering to help all beings. Available to all who are willing, Sadhguru's life is an invitation to the divine through individual transformation. Welcome to the silent revolution of self-realization.
Spirituality is like just about anything else in your life. Like in your life, when you're done with one thing, the next thing begins. Just like that. When you're done with everything, spiritual process begins. When you, like for example, to come to the basics of life, spirituality is very much like sexuality. In the sense, you are 14 and suddenly you know. Suddenly all those little things that meant a world to you as a child, the teddy bear is in the dustbin, you know, the teddy bear goes to the trash can and all the childish games disappear. Now, suddenly you know. Just like that, when a certain awareness arises in you, suddenly you know that little games don't satisfy you anymore. When you became 14, you thought what you were doing till then were petty things. Suddenly you know the big thing. When that big thing becomes a petty thing, now you're spiritual. The so-called big things of life become petty things in your life. Now spirituality arises. There the hormones induced the maturity. Here it's only awareness which can induce this maturity. When you have the awareness to see yourself through the various activities of life, the various compulsions of life, the various longings of life, as simply an endless rigmarole which doesn't really lead you on to anything in particular. You're at it for 50, 60 years and it doesn't move you an inch from anywhere to anywhere. Either you go through it and realize it on your deathbed, or as you begin it, or when you're into it, you realize it, when you still have time on your hands. So, the spiritual process has to begin somewhere. But the longing to go beyond the limitations in which you live is always there. Every little thing in our lives, when we are into it, it seems like it's everything, isn't it so? Every little thing in our lives. From eating what we want, to doing what we want, to relationships and all those things. When we are into it, it looks like it's the end all of life. It means so much. If we raise a little above that and look at it, suddenly they all become such petty things, you even wonder, why the hell am I in this? So when this question begins to rise, why am I in all these little things stuck like this? Then the spiritual process has begun. Unfortunately for most people, they endure their spirituality unconsciously. I say endure because when you unconsciously seek the highest truth, it's going to put you through all kinds of nonsense in your life. You really have to have a great endurance because it'll put you through the, everything, through a big breakfast, to a shopping mall, to marriage, through this and that and everything because you're unconsciously seeking some kind of fulfillment. After all, everybody is seeking fulfillment, isn't it? Either consciously or unconsciously is the only difference. When we say seeking the truth, see, truth is not a conclusion. Truth is not somewhere you go. It's not a destination. It is just a living experience. You cannot get to truth. You can never get to truth, but you can become truth. If you drop all your nonsense, you're truth. If you drop all your limitations, you are that. But you can never get there. It's not a conclusion, it's not a journey, it's not a destination to get to. It is just to become that. If you are willing to see life, experience life beyond all the limitations that you have gathered in the process of life, you are truth. Probably the English word truth creates a whole lot of misunderstanding because if you talk about truth, you'll have to talk about untruth. So the English word truth doesn't really say it. An appropriate word would be, in Sanskrit language, there is something called as Ritambara. It's called Ritambara, or if one is in that state, it's called Ritambara Prajna. One who is aware of Ritambara is Ritambara Prajna. Rit means that which is the foundation of everything. The cosmic basis of life is Rit. Whatever nonsense you believe yourself to be, fundamentally your life, isn't it? Is everybody life? Okay. Fundamentally you are life. If your life, the basis of life must definitely be somewhere accessible to you, whether it's rooted here or in the sky or in somewhere else, somewhere it must be rooted to that, isn't it? It must be connected. That which is life must always be in touch with the source of what it is. So getting to the very source of who you are is true. It's always there. It is just that it is covered up with the heap that you have gathered in the form of your body and your mind. These two heaps have covered it up. Now the whole effort, every kind of effort that we are doing, either early morning torture that you call as asanas, for those who have never bent their body, those who spent their life on the couch, asanas definitely look like torture, isn't it? Or the death game of trying to hold your breath. Because holding your breath is death, isn't it? But people claim pranayams are life-enhancing. Someone came and told me, this was way back when Isha Foundation was not what it was, what it is today, when it was just a small beginning. So, in India, this is unfortunately, where there's a whole age-old tradition of spirituality, when we do samyama, groups of people try to come and stop us. So big arguments, they say, we'll call the police, we'll do this. Why are you doing this? Why are you asking people not to speak? You won't believe this is in India. So, one hotshot young man, God gave us mouth to speak. Why have you shut it up? I said, your God told you to blabber probably. My God told me to shut up so that He can do that speaking. All these things won't get across, Because after all they want to do is physically do something to you. It starts verbally. Their intentions are very physical. It just starts verbally. So, this process of seeking the ultimate is so simple. At the same time, most human beings on the planet experience it as the most complex and impossible process, unfortunately. This is simply because what you're looking for is hidden within you. When I say you, I mean the things that you're identified with right now. In your own body, in your own mind, in your own whatever you experience as myself right now. And all that you have gathered in the form of body or in the form of mind always is focused on the outward. Your body is 100% outward, look at this. We've been going through this even in the basic introductories and things like that. Your five sense organs, which is the means through which you experience, are always outward bound, isn't it? You can see what is outside, you can't see what's inside. You can hear what is outside, you can't hear what is inside. You can sense and touch what is outside, you can't touch what is inside. So it is all outward bound. The same is true with your mind. Your mind is equipped only to go out. It is not equipped to go in. People are talking about turning their mind inward. There is no such thing. You cannot turn the mind inward. You can frustrate the mind by trying to turn inward so that it drops dead out of frustration. But you cannot turn the mind inward because the very nature of the mind is outward. It can only go outward. Whether you think about God, or you think about soul, or you think about truth, you're still looking outward, isn't it? God means up, isn't it, always? In every culture, God means up. Some cultures look down, that's different. That depends whether you belong to cat culture or dog culture. You know? Dogs always look up to you, cats always look down upon you. You feed a dog, it looks up to you with gratitude. You feed a cat, it looks down upon you with great disdain. This is what you eat? Okay. So, people are either looking up or looking down or looking away because they have no means to look inward. Right now, all the faculties, every aspect of what you know as myself is all outward bound. So if the longing has risen within you, that you want to know, you really want to know. I know this wanting to know sometimes bubbles up and again get lost in the daily rigmarole. It's… you know, the nature of the mind and the body is such, even the simplest processes of life could be greatly entangling. Simple things. Getting up in the morning, turning up the blinds, brushing your teeth, using the toilet, breakfast. If you work, whatever, these little things can be highly entangling. From the moment they wake up to the time they are finishing their breakfast, which is usually just a question of an hour or two, many people are at the peak of agitation. Isn't it so? Yes? Nothing has happened yet, no calamities have struck yet, you haven't met your boss yet, you know. Nothing has happened. You just saw your wife and your husband or maybe your children, you know all their tricks, isn't it? You've been with them for a few years, you know all their tricks, nothing to surprise you. Isn't it so? Within a few months or in a year's time, you should know all their tricks that they can play. So, but before reaching the breakfast table or before you get up from the table, people are in a peak of agitation. This is not because there is something wrong with your life, because nothing has gone wrong yet in the day. It is simply because that's the nature of the mind. If you allow it to rule you, that's how you go, there is no other way. It doesn't matter whether the life situations are going well or not going well. So, if this is the nature of your mind and this is the way life is going on, definitely it's time. Definitely it is an urgent need in everybody that they must look at the very nature of their life with a much deeper perspective, with a much deeper penetration into it, isn't it so? The time has come, isn't it? Most people don't realize that the time has come. They think they can do it next year. They think they can do it after 2 years. There is no such thing. If you value your life, the time has come. Only if you don't value your life, then time hasn't come, isn't it? If you have any value for this life and this creation, then the time has definitely come that we must look at life with its ultimate perspective. Otherwise, maybe there is time. Of course, there's a whole eternity ahead of you, there's really no hurry. If the longing arises, the longing genuinely arises in you, really, when your heart cries, wanting to know, when you know the pain of ignorance, when you really know the pain of ignorance, then a master arises. You don't have to look for him, because if your longing to know has really picked up a certain intensity within you, if the pain of ignorance has really, really gone deep into you, then he will anyway happen. People, I need to say this, I have initiated more people that I have never physically met than the people that I meet. Because people that you meet physically, there is a disadvantage, there is a handicap. When you… handicap is, the other person is also a person like you. He has a body like you, he eats like you, he speaks like you. This is a disadvantage, because you can't help judging him, you can't help being protective about yourself, you can't help all those things, the usual things that when you meet a person or people around you. So you are starting with a handicap. This has always happened. Unfortunately, this has always happened. Most of the time, it's only after many spiritual masters, after they have left, the methods and the processes and the teachings picked up momentum. When they were there, very rarely it picked up momentum. Most of the time, only after they left. Because suddenly you don't have to battle with his personality anymore. Dead people are always convenient. Almost all the time, that is how it has happened. Huge spiritual waves happened after the master is dead, physically dead. Because when he was physically alive, you have problems and problems and problems. It doesn't matter how much experience has happened at many moments. One word that you don't like, one action that you don't like, one something that you think is not okay, a wall arises. And very few masters have had the freedom to do what they please, whatever they see as right. Otherwise, most other people had to work with the existing values of the society, with the existing moralities, with the existing nonsense around them. Within that, they had to work. Within that, there's very little you can do. There's very little possibility. Within the limitations of your understanding, if you seek the ultimate, there is very little possibility. So when you carry a handicap intentionally, it's like this. One day two men were hunting in the… were on a hunt in the forest. One was carrying a large wooden cage The other was carrying a concrete pole with him. They were plodding across, both the things were heavy, they were walking in the forest. And the guy with the concrete pole asked after some time, "Why are you carrying this wooden cage?" That man said, "If a wild animal attacks me, I will just get into the cage and I will be safe." Then they walked on, really struggling through the forest. Then the other guy asked, "Why are you carrying a concrete pole?" This man said, "When a wild animal attacks me, I can drop the concrete pole and run faster." So, these 2 days, you come with a concrete pole or a cage? People drag their feet for many reasons. But most people are dragging their feet. It happened once on the Times Square. You know, these things can happen only there. One man was walking with his right foot dragging. Another man came in the opposite direction. He was also dragging his right foot. The first man looked him up, okay, one more guy dragging his right foot. Then as they came, he looked at him, pointed at his right leg and said, "1968, Vietnam." The other man pointed at his right leg and said, "Dog shit, 20 feet away." So, why you're dragging your feet may vary, but when you're dragging your feet, you don't walk, you don't reach where you have to reach. Like just now somebody was telling me, someone wants to jump into the spiritual path 100% by taking a certain step. Oh, but this person is only 18, is it not too early? Can't this person do it after 2 years? Oh, in 2 years so much calamity can happen, you know. You know when you're 18 to 20, how many calamities happened? In 2 years' time you can get so lost that there may be no recovery. Yes, 2 years, 2 days people can get lost. 2 hours people can get lost, isn't it? When the longing has come, if you think 2 more years or 2 more days or 2 more hours, it's gone. It's simply gone. Whatever you choose, when you're aware, alert, not entangled, when your intelligence is functioning with some sense of clarity, that's what you should go after in your life. When you're embroiled in something, when you're involved and entangled in something, your mind, your body and everything around you says something else. That's not the point. And the nature of your mind is every day it says different things, isn't it so? Because what you call as your mind has nothing to do with you. It is an accumulation that you gathered from outside. Because you gathered it in so many bits and pieces, it speaks in bits and pieces. Please see, in most minds, I would say 99.9% of the minds in the world can only speak sense in bits. Continuous dialogue is always absolute nonsense that they're talking, isn't it so? Yes? What goes on continuously in your mind is something that's happening because you're deeply entangled with something. Only in bits and pieces there are moments of sense. Because what you have gathered is from outside, and the process of gathering was always in bits and pieces. To integrate it into one whole, how much ever you try, there is no such thing. If you allow it to part, if you learn how to keep it aside, then there is a continuous stream of sense flowing from beneath the mind, from beyond the mind. But from the mind, continuous sense can never come. It can only come in bits and pieces, in flashes. These flashes can be inspiration, but can never be guidance. One flash here and there can just be an inspiration, but never a guidance. You can never depend on a light which is just on and off here and there and try to walk somewhere, isn't it? If it's on, then you could walk. On and off light can be just an inspiration to tell you, okay, there is something called light. But that light is no good, won't make a good torchlight for you, which just goes on and off at its own will, isn't it? It just tells you there is something called light, it's worth pursuing it. That's all. It cannot be a guidance, it can only be an inspiration.
Sadhguruji, what's the difference between mental awareness and… awareness and mental sharpness? Can you give us some examples?
Mind is incapable of being aware. It's only because of the mind you have become unaware. It's only the activity of the mind which has brought unawareness into you. So the question of mind and awareness together doesn't arise. When your experience of life is beyond the limitations of the mind, that's when you're really aware. Mind is capable of being sharp. It better be. Otherwise you'll even miss the jokes. When you miss the joke, you become the joke, isn't it? Let that not happen to yourself. So mind should be sharpened. But the problem with you is, the moment you have a sharp mind, you become terribly identified with it. See, if you have a no good body, you would think of bodilessness. Now you have a good body, or at least the kind of body which draws people's attention, now you are not thinking of bodilessness, you're thinking only body, isn't it? See, that's what has happened to whole cultures of people. As people attach more and more importance to the body, everything about them becomes about the body. Right now, in a large way, not completely, but in a large way, it has happened to the Western societies. Body has become the most important aspect. Now, you just see the promotional aspect. See, if you look at the advertising culture in a society, you understand what attracts people. What is the prime thing in people's minds? Because advertising is about selling. If something has to be sold, it has to appeal to you, isn't it? You take anything, something as subtle as fragrance. Fragrance is a subtle thing. But fragrance is all about sex, isn't it? Isn't it so? The kind of smells that we are talking about, the kind of fragrances that we are talking about is all about inducing sex or exciting sexuality. Isn't it so? I'm talking about the advertising. I know, maybe you just came from the Black Forest yesterday. So fragrance is become a huge tool towards bodily pleasures, isn't it? The same thing, if you look at the Eastern cultures, fragrance is an important part of spiritual process. Any temple, any prayer house, any puja room, any little shrine, there is a certain kind of fragrance which is not at all about the body. Just the simple aspect of using smells, if you look at it culturally, where people are oriented, either towards the body or beyond the body, it's right there. This is so with everything. Take music. Today the modern music is on that stage they're doing everything a man and woman can do in vertical postures. With clothes on, of course. Isn't it so? It's no more about anything, it's all about physical body, isn't it? If you can sing well, you're no more a musician. You must be able to gyrate. Yes or no? So, this kind of trend, I'm not saying everything, but the major trend, I'm just using it as examples. It's not branding anybody anything. The same thing, the classical music was always about going beyond the physical limitations. When I was just mentioning some time ago, Ritambara means that which is the very source of cosmos. Rit means the foundation of the cosmos. So that which is the foundation of the cosmos includes both bad and good. Or it has no distinction as to what is bad and good. It's just seeing creation as creation. It is not seeing anything as ugly or beautiful. It is not seeing anything as good or bad. It is not seeing anything as God or devil. It is seeing just everything the way it is. That's awareness. Mind can only function with discretion, otherwise mind is useless. Mind as a faculty is useful to you only because it can discriminate between what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong, isn't it? Otherwise, what good is your mind? Your mind is no good. So mind is like a knife. If you have a knife, you better have a sharp knife. Somebody told you a sharp knife is dangerous, so you carry a blunt knife, then it's no good. Yes, a sharp knife is dangerous. If you walk into somebody, you may kill or you may do something to yourself, possible. But if you have a knife, you must have a sharp knife, real sharp knife, isn't it? Because when you want to use it as a knife, it must be sharp, otherwise it will not perform its functions the way it should. But sharp knife can only cut, cannot put things together, isn't it? Sharp knife can only divide, sharp knives cannot unite. So it is not a tool for yoga. Yoga means union. Yoga means to make everything into one. You can't make everything into one by cutting it into pieces. The more and more you use it, the more and more pieces you have in your life. This is what has happened to the intellectual people of the world. They are more confused and more lost than anybody. People with blunter knives are living lives little more peacefully and joyfully. Yes? People with sharp knives are totally lost in the world simply because they don't know where to use it and where not to use it. They use it on everything because they're so identified with the sharpness of their knife that they just about anything that they give, they use it. People are using it on their gurus also, isn't it? It doesn't work, but they use it. They want to dissect him also and see what's right, what's wrong about him. It's no use, but people do it. The more they use it, the more they'll feel lost. Because the more you use your knife, the smaller and smaller pieces the world will become. And suddenly, there is no place to stand on because everything has become such a minute particle. So awareness, if you move into your awareness, you explode into the oneness of the existence. If you move into the mind, you move into the discretion of splitting the world into pieces. So these two things are completely different.
You are my perfect mirror, you show me what I'm not. In the endless pit of what once was me, layer and layer you peel off me. The pain it is, but the joy it brings. So thank you for showing me what I'm not, for showing me what I could be.